When we think about automatic thoughts, we can often place them into a number of common categories of styles of thinking that everyone engages in. When I say everyone, I mean everyone, not just people who struggle with anxiety. These ways of thinking are so common, in fact, that we even have names for them. Here are some common unhelpful thinking styles. One of the most commonly used styles of thinking is what we call catastrophizing. This is when your thoughts snowball. So, for example, you start off with the thought, I'm going to fail this test, which leads to the thought, if I fail the test, I'll fail the class, and then I'll fail out of UNCC and never graduate, and then I'll never get a good job, and finally, I'll be homeless and unable to support myself. Notice how that went downhill pretty quickly. Sound familiar to anyone? That was just one example of many. Take a moment to look at each of the different thinking styles listed here. As you go through these styles of thinking, start to identify the ones you tend to use. This may include all of them, it may be just a few. I'll give you a moment to look through this list, but feel free to pause the video. Now, let's practice identifying unhelpful thinking patterns by returning to the sample party situation. What do you think are some of the unhelpful thinking styles that this person may have had? Go ahead and jot those thoughts down. Once more, I'll give you a moment to do so, but you may want to pause the video. Now let's turn back to your homework assignment again. Do any of the thoughts you wrote down in the cognitive box of your homework fit into any of these unhelpful thinking categories? Go ahead and write the unhelpful thinking style near the corresponding thought in the cognitive box on your homework. Please pause the video as needed. These unhelpful thinking patterns can trigger other anxiety symptoms. And as you may have noticed, we come back a lot to the interactions between thoughts, feelings, behaviors, and physical symptoms, and talk about how they each impact one another. Each of these types of symptoms, unhelpful thoughts included, can be triggers for other symptoms. So let's talk about some common triggers. Triggers can be external events like a test, or they can be internal stimuli, like feeling lightheaded or noticing that your heart is racing. Having one symptom can be a trigger for other symptoms. For example, I just said lightheadedness, which is a symptom of anxiety. But lightheadedness can also be a trigger for other symptoms, like thought or behavior symptoms. Understanding your triggers is important because it helps you know yourself better. Understanding your triggers can also help you know when to use your toolbox before it feels overwhelming. Take a look at the domains of triggers listed here. We're going to look at this list, learn about common triggers, and identify some of our own. Keep in mind that your triggers may or may not fit in these categories. Some examples of triggers might include actual events like being invited to a party. It might include physical sensations like a racing heartbeat. They might include thoughts like worrying about the health or safety of others. Before moving on to the next video, take some time to list some triggers that you experience in conjunction with your anxiety. You can pause the video on this slide so that you can refer to the examples listed here.